Matherly presiding, come to order and remain standing.
Thank you, Sheriff. Our first order of business this evening is our prayer, which will be led by Commissioner Huffine. Immediately following the prayer will be the pledge, led by Commissioner Carey.
Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, we come before you this evening thankful and hopeful. Hopeful of the beautiful weather, the spring that is out there, the sunshine, the warmth that it brings, dear Lord. Let that rejuvenate our spirits, Lord, to serve you in even a stronger way. Tonight, bless us and all the people that are presenting here this evening. Lead, guide, and direct us, dear Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Let us address our flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you switch us to the roll call screen? I guess we're there now.
roll call. Jim, you have an answer.
It hasn't got you yet, Rita. Is it not picking you up? Let me get you a fresh battery.
You better make that 2 batteries.
Do you need another?
Yeah, I think so.
Giving you a fresh battery earlier?
That is quote.
Yeah.
No, you've exceeded your battery quota for the second.
I'm billing for that.
Can you do your own or do you need me to do?
I think I can do it.
Because I gotta do commissioner.
Commissioner Tester ain't here.
No, he's not.
Must have voted so much that last meeting, my battery went dead.
32 resolutions.
That's right. Yeah, Commissioner Tester's absent. Oh, yes, thank you, Kathy.
Ken? Creatures of habit.
Kathy, can you clear the screen because we've got commissioners that voted with the wrong buttons.
I think they're correct now. Am I not?
Are they correct?
I think they're correct now. Yeah, they're correct.
Yeah.
All right. Is this a new screen?
I don't think that's the same screen we usually see, but
Yeah, it's not normally the
it's
same
not the
screen.
second screen, yeah.
Some of it I can't see. So we have 10 present and 5 absent. We do have a quorum.
It's not the usual screen.
At this time, we'll move into public comment regarding agenda items. Do we have any agenda signups for public comment? Did we have a clipboard?
There were none signed up.
Okay, there were none signed up for public comment. So our next item is elected officials and department heads are going to address the commission this evening regarding their FY 22-23 budget. Mitch, we'll go ahead and start with you and talk about appropriations. Or Mayor? I think I had Mitch on the agenda, Mayor.
Well, you would like to be started.
You was gonna get off the hook, see?
The bid this afternoon, on his way back into the courthouse with 10 armloads full of stuff, lost his footing and did a face plant on one of the steps. So, Commissioner Huffine, I should have told you because we do need to say a prayer for Mitch, but he is alive and well. I spoke to him recently and he'll be here shortly, probably to rescue me, but anyway, hopefully to rescue me. I think we need headgear on those steps, so that is, hopefully we can find a little room in the budget for that. But he'll be here shortly, but in order to get going, the first thing that he was gonna talk about was the appropriations. And I really don't know what he was gonna say specifically, but it's on a separate sheet. These are your fire departments and your animal control and a number of other things. If there's any line on here that you would like to have presented by somebody who, from the outside, somebody knows more about it. If you want to hear something about the fire departments, for example, you might ask Charlie in. We'll do our best to get them here tomorrow night to address any particular concerns. So, Mr. Chairman, before the end of the meeting, as people think about that, we maybe could just capture anybody on here that you'd like to hear from specifically about their request, and we'll try to get them here tomorrow night.
Okay, we'll do that, Mayor,
All
before
right,
we.
and so the only other thing that I would add, before we start tonight, you'll hear presentations from various departments or elected officials about their budget. So all of you have received their budget as presented so far. I have to tell you, it's very fluid information. It was still changing yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock. And we'll change further before we have a final version. But directionally, I think what you have in front of you is going to be accurate from these department heads. These are the people that in the general fund spend the taxpayers' money, and a few that are out of the general fund. Solid waste is here, for example. We'll also hear from the highway department. Those are separate funds apart from the general fund. But the general fund, as you know, makes up about $42 to $44 million worth of government spend. These are really all taxpayers' dollars. So the things you might think about when these folks are presenting is what they're presenting. Does it make sense to you? Do you have specific questions? Do you feel like they're overspending or underspending in any particular line? Do they have adequate resources to do their job? These are the folks that provide the services for our citizens. They do the car tags, they do the registration of deeds, they do the planning and zoning, all of the government stuff. I don't look too bad. All right, I was expecting like a zombie look, so good deal. All right. Well, do you want to say anything? I've talked about the appropriations to the point that if there's anybody on here they want to specifically hear from, we'll try to get them tomorrow. And then given just a little address about the presentations. And so again, these are the folks that spend the money that you appropriate. And so that's really what we're focused on this next 2 days, are expenditures, as revenues will be another time. So anyway, thank you. And Mitch, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Pardon me? Please, sure.
Yeah, anybody else?
Excuse me, I'm trying to catch my breath, y'all.
And I know this is a lot of stuff and you just got it this morning. But as I've been telling all of our officials and department heads that are, coming in to speak to you all, I said, this is a process. what you're going to hear today is really the initial pass at these numbers. And then as we move forward and, the budget committee and the commission will come up with a budget that's balanced and provides the services it needs to the citizens of Washington County. Did you talk about anything in here other than the special appropriation schedule on the front?
No.
Okay, what you have in here, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, is, of course, the very first page, and there's a table of contents on the front. First page is the special appropriations. Immediately behind that, you'll see a summary of our general fund expenditures. 2020, 21 actual numbers compared to year-to-date 22, compared to the original and revised budget in the current year, and then the budget number that has been submitted from the various departments and officials. And so it's a 2-page summary. Page 3, highlight of this is that we started last year with a budget of $44.9 million in the general fund in expenditures. Our budget today is 49.6. That increase is $2.6 million for broadband and 1.6 million. All right, I'm having my senior moment. The industrial park. Okay, so those were the big bumps from your original budget of 44.9 to where you are today, 49.6 million. Y'all stop me anytime if you got questions. So,
Mitch, one thing I would appreciate, probably maybe at the end tomorrow evening when we get to that point, but my concern is twofold. It all centers around inflation. I'm concerned what inflation is going to do to our taxpayers and their abilities. Because I saw in the business news this morning, they're saying consumers this year will spend probably $2,000 more on gasoline. They're going to spend about 20% more on food. The housing costs are going up, interest rates are going up. I'm concerned about the effect it's going to have on our taxpayers. And then the second thing is another kind of overall view, and that is what adverse effect will inflation have on us in terms of, I look at gasoline and diesel, what it's going to go up. Salaries, that's the number one thing I hear from every business I talk to is, their employees are just not able to stay even with inflation. So, just kind of an overall view of how all this affects the county's budget.
the county's made up of operations not unlike households. We're going to have a challenge. I think you are going to have somewhat of a challenge on the revenue side and on the service delivery expenditure side. We've got some departments that have gone ahead and doubled their gasoline budget for next year. As a percentage of the whole budget, it's not a huge number. I think 1.9, 1.4%, something like that. But it is real dollars. And so, and that's just something, hopefully you all, with some help from us, can work through that, process. And so, that's what we're here to do.
Mayor?
Thank you. In regard to that's really a great segue into a lot of the things we'll be discussing today, because what you said is so very true. Food, you've already seen, we've had to make an adjustment in the jail. I mean, just to get through this fiscal year. So what that's going to look like next year, you'll see. What I've asked the departments to do with fuel is to essentially double last year's budget, and we'll hopefully don't have to add too much more to it. But in order to maintain consistency from department to department, we try to, so hopefully we'll start to done that. In regard to salaries, pulled all the elected officials, department heads together several weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, talked through that a little bit. my ask of them, and I think what you'll see in these presentations is what they believe they need to keep their people, with the understanding that if we don't maintain some sort of a competitive wage, we'll lose our people, and then we're going to wind up rehiring people at a higher price anyway, and we've got to train them. And various offices have various lengths of time it takes to get someone trained from 2 months to 8 months. And so our good quality employees in the county, we want to keep them because it's very expensive to change, as all of us know that have a business. So those were the suggestions, and it is perfect to what you said because it really ties in. So, we're responsible for trying to manage a government to provide services to the citizens that are paying for those services in the most efficient way possible. So that may be some things that y'all look for in these presentations, and feel free to ask any questions you have.
You know, one other point, Mayor, and it's just directed to you again.
Yes, sir.
Have you gotten any information from the state? The other thing I'm worried about is that with the cost of food, the cost of gasoline, cost of housing, heating your house, consumers are going to have less discretionary income to spend. And we are an income tax driven state. Now, has the state said anything to you about what they think that might affect our sales tax collections?
I have not, Commissioner. No, I haven't been plugged into any of that. You've got inflationary costs, which, if numbers are going up, then that in and of itself would increase sales tax,
But if people have got less money to spend.
But they got, so
They're spending it on
Right.
food and gas and
right.
whatever.
Yep. But I have not. No, the only thing I've gotten from the state to date is the fact that they lowered the comptroller or the Department of Revenue, or Lillard, the state treasurer, lowered they had a banner year. They had the best year return in their investment portfolio, and y'all may have heard some of this at CTAS or something, but it was the best year they've ever had in 25, 30 years. Well, but they've lowered their investment rate of return by 1% or 1.5%. Well, when they do that, that drove our pension contribution up by about 25%.
One thing I wanted to add to that,
Yes, sir.
Mitch, I watched that as well as you did, and just whereas they're changing some of the metrics in there as well. One thing that goes against us a little bit, we're living too long. And with those metrics, going back in there and changing those metrics, retirement plans are having to last longer, and that was, I think we're all going to suffer on that a little bit.
And with an older pool of employees, because there's not as much time to get those dollars in. So it's
There was a lot of metrics that were affected on that retirement plan. So
that's what I've heard from the state to date, Commissioner Carriger. It really wasn't good, so I don't know.
Commissioner Malone, did you have a question?
Well, it related to the retirement issue, the TCRS. I mean, 25% is a significant increase, and I saw that in your email, but I wasn't sure what that meant for the county as a whole in terms of dollars. Do you have an idea?
Oh, don't hold me to this. I ran the number several days ago. I've slept since then, and I was just ran it. I want to say it's close to $500,000 for the general fund.
So that's
A little south of that.
an added almost $500,000 expense just tied to retirement funding.
Correct.
The other thought, and this I guess just echoes Commissioner Carriger, is at least as long, and I think it predates me, but at least as long as I've been on the commission, our revenues have been growing roughly, and I feel handicapped without the whiteboard. I mean, but our revenues have been growing around 1 to 1.2%, and that's the property tax revenues. But our expenses have been growing, really our expenses have been growing pre this inflation we're experiencing now. Our expenses have been growing about 3.5 or 4%. So revenues 1.2, but expenses, significantly higher. But with with the inflationary pressures we're seeing now, the problem the county has already been experiencing is only worse, because now our expenses are gonna be growing probably double of what they have been. And so it is an issue. And one of the bright spots, I think Commissioner Carragher was referencing sales tax, one of the bright spots in the county has been the fact that sales tax receipts have been up significantly, but none of that increase flows to the county's general fund.
Correct.
So that in terms of the funding mechanism, when sales tax receipts are up, it doesn't necessarily benefit the county's general fund. Thank you.
Correct. Behind that, behind that expenditure summary, I'll start on page 4, are all the individual departments within the general fund. And you can see the particular details, salaries, benefits, whatnot. And then you'll have, starting on page 75, the information for the solid waste fund, which I think we'll hear from Lewis maybe tomorrow, if I remember correctly. And then the highway department starts on 79, which I believe Johnny's on tap for tomorrow as well. Something I did want to put in there that I thought might be of interest to you is on page 87. If you want to flip to that, what that does is actually summarizes our budgets and actual numbers for the general fund, solid waste, and highway fund in various categories in terms of, are we talking salaries and personnel benefits? Or are we talking, other charges, construction, capital outlay, and you can kind of see where those numbers fall out. Depending on which number you use as a base for our budget in the general fund, it's somewhere between 61 and 69% of your budget is personnel cost, benefits and salaries and wages. And then immediately behind that is just some errata or addenda. I didn't put into your packet all the actual worksheets that the departments sent, but if they did provide some explanation or request or some written document to outline what their needs are, those are on those last almost 25 pages, which is more than welcome. And they are in the same order that the departments are listed in our general fund budget. One thing I also have in the office that I don't have in this packet, but will be more than glad to send to anybody that wants one or wants them, is from our special appropriations. We generally get a request, and they may say, we're budgeted us at the same thing that you budgeted us last year, or they may have some reason or explanation for increasing their ask. I'm more than happy to get that for y'all tomorrow if you think you'd like to see those. Fire departments, EMS, 911, those other agencies, libraries. So I'll bring those tomorrow. Just was thinking through that. I don't have anything else at this point. We're a little early, so do y'all have any questions or
Yeah, just if I did my math, I'm thinking a 3% bump in our salaries. Is that about $1 million? Maybe you can look at it.
Let me look, Commissioner. I don't want to say, because I haven't run that number since last year when we did our bonus.
That's fine. Maybe, tomorrow I'd be fine.
Okay.
Well, Mitch, we appreciate you being here, and
All right.
we'll go ahead and get started with our assessor's office. Chief Deputy is here with us this evening. Chief Deputy McGuire is here. Glad for him to be here with us. Robbie, appreciate you taking some time to come talk with us this evening.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
You'll be on pages 19 and 20.
Yes, sir. And Scott regrets that he is not able to attend tonight and wishes you all well.
Tim, we'd rather see you than
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, you've all seen our budget and everything, so if you got any questions, I'll be happy to go over anything. 98 is just a actual, the list of what we were,
Looks like
the breakdown.
an additional request of $15,000 for data processing equipment.
Yes, good question. Okay, we need to run some new ports, some more ports into our office. But our switch that we currently have will not support it. So whoever requests it has to pay for it. So that's gonna come out of our budget. So that's why the additional funds. And the reason I asked for 15 is because they could not actually give us a figure at that time. Because the way the data, the equipment and everything, the shorthandedness, and everything's going up. So that's why I just came up with a figure. I don't know, that would be a BCTI question and they couldn't get back with
So
me.
does this budget on pages 19 and 20 look pretty much like your normal request year to year? And then this is the only real change, the 15?
Well, we always break down, unless there's a change, and we always break down our changes every year as far as what we're actually changing. Everything else should pretty much be the same.
Right.
The fuel, we did double our fuel because we don't know, what to expect.
Right.
And as far as the vehicles, like we've got the Focus, it's an 07 Focus, it's still out of commission. It's been out of commission now for over a year and a half. Still waiting on a chip. We got an 06 Explorer and it's got right at 70,000 miles on it, or 65,000. So we do have some older vehicles. We're just trying to weed out, as we go.
What kind of salary increase did you do, folks?
That I don't know off the top of my head. I do know
Well, there may be a new position here, but
there is.
somewhere around, on a combined basis, 35%.
Well, but that's for, well, right. And the reason we're having,
I'm adjusting for that really because it looks like increases of existing employees are around 33 and then about 37 for the new position of the open comparative.
I don't know that we're not looking to hire two new positions.
Line probably, is this overall like a 38%? It looks like 38% increase.
I didn't have anything to do with that necessarily.
No, I'm saying bottom line for the assessor's office in general. It looks like it's going from roughly 670,000 to almost 924, is that right?
The reappraisal program, on the reappraisal side, yes, but you gotta remember the cities pay part of that too. Johnson City and Jonesboro on that. So that's why everything that we have, as far as vehicles and things like that the field people take out, the field appraisers, it is out of the reappraisal program.
Can you explain that on the reappraisal program, the health insurance going up 78%?
Probably because of the new hires.
Well, how many deputies are in that department, the reappraisal program?
All but three. So we got, should be 8.
And is the new position, is it in that program or is it over in?
Yes, it'll be in the reappraisal program.
Okay, so we're going from 8 to 9.
No, probably 10. Should be two new positions.
New positions, okay. But the salaries are going up, line item 33%. And I understood that, the explanation for that being the two new. But for the health insurance to go up 78%, that doesn't match up with, we're just doing 2 new hires.
Where's Mitch? He might have an answer for that. I have no idea. I mean, I don't know.
This way was one of these things we need to hear about from Mr. Buckingham.
Well, I mean, as far as why the insurance would be different, I have no idea. I mean,
Is
'cause
Scott
everybody-
gonna be here tomorrow night?
No,
I don't know, not,
no.
well, it'd be nice to know, how many people we're hiring, how much the actual increase in salaries and benefits are.
I agree.
So I think it'd be good if you could find out that for us,
I'll-
and give us a report tomorrow night.
Okay, what time tomorrow night?
I think we start, what?
Just, yeah, we start at 5, if you can be here, and we go on till 7 o'clock tomorrow night too, I think, or 7:30.
One other question while
Go.
we're looking at them. The increase in the data processing equipment from 5,000 to 38,000, is that, a portion of that, is a portion of that the 15,000
Yes.
back here? Okay.
Yes.
But that's about half of it, but what's the rest of that for?
That'd be also on the, back here in the very back for a plotter and a new copier. Cause the data processing equipment we have on there for 15,000, and then we have a new plotter and a new copier. So that would be a total of another 18,000.
Is that on page 100?
Yes, sir.
And does the car show up somewhere about?
Car is also on that same page.
You know, it just looks a little squirrely, employee healthcare insurance. This fiscal year is about 12,881 per employee. Next year it's gonna jump up to 18,366 per employee.
Do you have any idea on that?
No, what that would be, well, we really, the only thing we would have changed health insurance for would have been, if they were adding, and I think you've got either 2 or 3, folks coming on board, one replaced Ben, and then there were 2 other positions in your budget. Well, if we're budgeting for a new employee, I don't know if they're taking family plus 1, or employee plus 1 or family, or they're covered under their, spouses. So that's what is probably driving that, is that if you've added employee, and good question, because none of the departments have really done any work on their pension or their, employee health insurance. They just don't have that data to do that. And it's just as easy for us to do it based on the number of employees they have or they're expecting to have. And so that's what's generating that.
Is he hiring 2 or 3? Cause they were asking me, it looked like a 38% in salary, so, and I don't know.
If I remember right, and I don't know if you have the stuff I sent Scott, if you have his payroll sheets.
I don't.
For that. Probably up for free. I think Ben left, and so he was filling Ben's position, and I think there were 2 more.
Okay, so a total of 3. Three new salaries.
Yes, sir.
A family plan that the county pays for is close to 20,000.
Yes.
Okay.
So that would be 60 of the 80 if there's 3.
Well, and I think this question is deserving of an answer, and that's all I want, Mayor.
Question as well, I mean, you're increasing headcount. Why? And just for information.
Oh, no. Well.
You've got, statutorily wise, the assessor is statutorily allocated, 1, deputy for.
Every 4,500 parcels.
Yeah, and we're way underneath that number.
We could actually have like 14 people.
Driven by the new census.
No, it's.
No, that's partial count.
There's 45, one.
How's that different from last year?
Because of the increase in people moving here.
Okay, so.
The increase in sales. This.
One person becomes I understand building permits, how to pull new houses down. My question is,
okay, we built 600 homes. And
Who's gonna pick them up? Oh, I'm sorry.
and that's a growth percentage of 10%. And we're adding 20% headcount. That doesn't follow. And maybe we're right in line with percentage of growth versus headcount and work in the office. That's just my question. Are we growing at the same rate? You know, I understand you can ask for, you know, and justify that, but that's my question. Are we growing at the same rate, or are we growing at a larger rate with headcount versus?
We are growing, to give you, and I did this from January of 2020 to today, in 2020, there was 885 deeds that came into our office. In 21, there was 1,338. Okay, that's how much growth. So what that, so what's happening is the growth, that's not counting the subdivisions and everything else that's coming on. All the new growth and everything. We have been working on a skeleton crew for many years. You know, we all know what happened in 9. We know what happened in 14. Now, you know, all of a sudden we had COVID, everything died. So we got through all that. Now all of a sudden we just can't keep up. The amount of growth is just unreal.
But I still would like to see.
I mean, if you want me to.
You got the job done. If you save the taxpayers' money, you know, it took care of the office, but just to see your headcount grow.
Well, okay, to give you an idea, every county the size of our county has 2 mappers. We have 1. That's me. Okay? And I can't keep up. Well, wait a minute. I can't keep up. I mean, right now, Mitch, how much time do I have? I'm just saying how many hours. I mean, I'm coming in at 6 o'clock and working at 4:30 because just to get the job done. So now we can't.
Your hours, then that's not a complete 3-person headcount.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you're working 60 hours a week, and you're gonna be able to go to 40 hours a week, if we bring an extra person, that's not a full person. It's half a person. 40-hour week. But you're working 60 if 2 people work 40 hours a week. That's 80 hours. So it's really not a full person. Now benefits, I get benefits, they double. So that's my question. The other question is, do y'all have a fund balance?
No. No. We're not a fee office. Go ahead.
I realized now that I was looking specifically at the reappraisal piece, and I think you referenced to me, it's the reappraisal piece that the budget is going, and it's budget, not actual, but the budget's going from 670,000 to the proposed 924. So that's an increase of about 254,000 for 3%. But I guess I'm seeing the expense piece there, the increased expense piece there, but I'm not seeing the associated revenue that comes from the city or the town. Is that correct?
Correct. That they build that every year to the.
So some portion of that 254 increase on the reappraisal piece will get billed out to the city of Johnson City and the town of Johnson.
Yes, that's why I stood up. It's huge. It's not half. It's about a third, maybe a little bit more than that. It's based on the number of parcels within each jurisdiction.
Can you get that number for us?
Yeah.
So on
The parcels for the. Oh, okay. Yes.
The car that you have, what is it now? What are you replacing it with?
More than likely the 2006 Explorer.
Okay.
It's got a bad transmission.
And knowing where we are with fuel cost and that, have we looked at alternative vehicles that may be suitable, better mileage. And I
Such
think
as-
that'd be a question I would ask to.
I mean, such
any
as,
Department. I don't know. That's what I'm asking. What's,
I mean,
last time I
we,
looked at Explorer, it's not the most economical.
oh, no, we won't replace it with an Explorer. We'll probably get what we,
That was my
like the
question.
Escapes, what we have now.
Okay, no, that was my question.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, makes sense.
It would
I
either
agree,
be,
I
in-
agree with that. Thank you for being conscious.
oh, yeah, I mean, we,
100.
so does, Mr. Carragher, does that answer your question about the
Yes.
employees and stuff? Do I need to come back tomorrow? With
No,
the-
we're hiring 4 new employees, if I understood.
Should be three.
Three
Three.
new employees. I'm fine.
Okay.
Let me ask a question on that. You all kept talking about one person leaving and replacing them and 2 new. So is that really 3 new or is that 2 new positions?
Mitch?
I'll need to look back, but I mean, memory was that it was 2 new positions, Robbie.
That's what I was thinking too, when replacing them. See,
Well,
if
in
y'all
hard,
are,
in hard numbers, you got 115.
well, and what we did is, when COVID hit, that's when Barbara left. You know, when COVID hit and everything, so we were down to 1 and we stayed because the courthouse was locked down and everything. So all that traffic and everything we didn't have, so we had a minimal traffic.
I stand corrected because I was just thinking of the field appraisers. You do have 2, you got 2 field appraisers replacing Ben and a new mapper.
So is that
So
3?
that would be, yeah, there's 3.
3 new.
3 new,
Okay.
3 new positions.
We had talked about it, but I wasn't sure which direction he went.
Is the map with some new requirements in the state or
Second?
the map, is that something that's required by the state or is there anything new that y'all have to do to?
Oh, no, I mean, it's just, we have 1 mapper and that's it,
What
so,
happens if he gets hit by a truck?
or train,
Maps.
who maps?
Just for my poor old brain to get it clarified here. Right now, you've got 8 employees.
We have 10 employees, and count Scott.
10 employees, and then next year, how many employees are we gonna have? 13?
13,
Okay, thank you.
14?
So we're going from
Okay,
10 to
14.
14.
Well, because Ben's not in the 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you got Ben that you're replacing,
Okay,
and then the new mapper and 2 appraisers.
so 13.
13.
You'll have 14 employees.
So this year you had 11 positions budgeted.
Correct.
So then 14 is the 3 new. So there was a gap. When did he leave?
December.
So means we're going from 10 to 14,
11.
11 to 14.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I want to know.
And that's on
That
both
helps.
sides, assessor and
No, that's just
reappraisal?
reappraisal.
We're just talking about reappraisal.
Yes. The city's pay reappraisal.
The mapper is on the reappraisal side?
Yes.
What, so, this question was asked earlier, but I don't think we've answered this. The 37% increase on the assessor side, is one of these employees, new employees, gonna be on the assessor side of the equation?
On the 37% for the deputies?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge, no. I don't know if he's putting any of that in part-time or, well, now, okay,
You got, that consists of, going students and roof.
well, the other salaries and wages was moved to, up to deputies, is what it looks like, the minus 39%, or minus 39,000. Item 189 was moved to 106 deputies, is what it looks like. Am I correct?
I don't
don't think the number is accessible like that.
No, I mean, down there at the bottom, it just looks like we went down 2%. We actually saved money on the assessor side of 2%.
Why was that under other salaries and wages before?
189, 52, 300.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That went to zero.
Correct.
We just put them all under deputies.
Right. That was just for budgetary, to simplify. Yes.
Having to worry.
Right, I think we just had one person in that line item. So we just moved everybody to deputies. So one went down, one went up.
Mr. Kate?
Question, if you could, for my people of mine, who prepares the budget?
Mr. Buckingham.
Looks to me like he should be the one coming in to stand tall for his budget. And that's nothing against you, but I'm just saying.
Oh, I understand.
It looks to me like you've been thrown under the bus in questions like mine.
Well, I just put it this way. I'm doing the best I can. I stand behind the budget. We do talk about it. The final decision is his. He is the elected official. I'm not. There's information I'm not privileged to. But as far as, I'll tell you all, I've sat where you do. I think you all do a great job. I know it's a very hard, stressful job. But as far as our department, we try to save every dollar we can. And, that's why I don't mind working the hours and everything that I do. For the simple reason, when you look at hiring somebody, you're looking at right off the bat, even if you pay them $30,000, which as a base salary, well, you've got to add $20-some thousand worth of benefits. So that's costing the county taxpayer $50,000. So, and I understand that because I've sat where you are. So we do understand that because he's been there. So when we look at hiring somebody, it's not because we want to, it's a necessity. If I don't map, then we don't have any new revenue coming in. So if I die, then we don't have anybody. And I promise you, I've been doing it for 16 years. You do not learn this overnight.
Please don't die.
That's what we're trying to keep from.
Don't take my questions wrong.
I don't.
Questions for understanding. It's not a question that you're doing something wrong.
No.
And as far as Mr. Buckingham not being here tonight like others, I mean, people make plans. It's not like this has been on a calendar for a year. We have several commissioners that's not here. And, I'm sure
Thank you.
they have those kind of things as well. So, and when I believe I may be speaking now, but when you're the
Chief.
Those duties fall to you.
You got it. Prepared or not prepared.
That's how the process works. So, thank you for coming. And my questions, and I feel like my other commissioners' questions are not meant to throw stones.
No, and I don't take it that way, but I do, I take what I do with a lot of pride, and I want, one of these days, none of us will be here, but we all want to look back. Somebody said, you know what, I don't know who ran it at that time. They did a great job. Whether it was being a commissioner, whether it was doing mapping, whatever we do in life, you want to make sure that you do the very best you can.
Please don't take my question.
Oh, no, I don't. I don't take anything personally.
Asking one to know because it just seemed to me like you've been thrown.
I don't feel that way. You got to remember, I deal with people's money every day, taxpayers. When your values go up, you're going to call me and want an answer. So trust me, I don't take offense to it. I want people to know. The only way you're going to learn is to ask questions.
Well, I think this is a new process as far as being full of.
Yes, last year I just went before the budget.
It's a learning process for all of us. I think that's the key. Mitch, just to keep me grounded here, just from a total assessor, if we look at that 253 and we say it's a 60-40 split, that brings the county in at about 151,000, our portion of it.
That's in the ballpark.
Ballpark, and then, so there's 5,600 under on one side, so ballpark $146,000 in new money that they're looking for.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, to me, that's a grounding point, is at the end of the day, how much money we gotta go find?
Out of the delta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm old fashioned.
So the increase is 100% of what they're gonna spend in their office. We're paying less than 100%.
Correct.
But what we're comparing this to, are we comparing it to what they spent last year or what we paid last year?
No, what you're seeing on your schedules, that's in front of you, the 253 that Commissioner Huffine alluded to, is the change in the 23 budget as it's sitting in front of you, and the budget as it exists today. Not what we spent in the prior year, not what we spent the year before. That information's in here if you want to look at it.
So our percentage is going up that much.
No, not the total number.
The spend is going up, but the amount of revenue that we will generate from the city of Johnson City and the town of Jonesboro is 30 to 40% of that number.
But what we're showing here in spend, we didn't spend all that either on this because it was split with, you're following me, so at least.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, we spent it all, but there was an offsetting revenue.
Correct.
Yes.
But our spend from last year would go up the same percentage.
That's correct.
Because they contributed last year, just like they're gonna contribute this year.
Correct.
Right, but their contribution doesn't impact the expenditure side of it. It's all up in revenue. So I mean, these are the organic dollars that are spent. We receive the revenue, which comes in up at the top. So, I mean, if you look at the net, you're exactly right. I mean, they don't pay half the bill, or, a third of the bill. We send them the bill at the end of the year for the $140,000. That'll flow, I mean, the delta in here for reimbursement. That'll flow back in as,
So just to ground on my question and make sure I'm right, from the county's perspective, our incremental dollars to the assessor right now, as we're speaking tonight, $147,000.
70% of the 253.
Okay.
Yes, right. Go that route.
I never took a percent to the bank. I like dollars.
Chief, do you have anything for us?
Thank you for your service. Appreciate everything y'all do.
We appreciate you being here
Yes,
tonight.
sir.
Send our regards to Mr. Buckingham.
I'll send him a
And,
postcard.
Tell him if he would like to come back and see us at any commission meeting, we'll be
I'll
here,
happy to.
and
Hey,
we'll be
thank you
happy
all
to
so
have
much.
him placed on the
Any
agenda.
more questions or anything? Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Thank you for your consideration.
I'll let you get back in your place there, Commissioner Tester. All right, our next speaker this evening is our county clerk, Kathy Story. I will turn on her microphone so she does not have to go to the podium.
If you all will, if you'll move over about 2 pages from where we were, page 22.
Page 22.
How are you, Jody? Okay, does anybody have any questions about our budget?
Yeah, what percent pay raises?
2% across the board. The
Commissioner Wheeler?
biggest expense that we had this year, starting in January, was our postage. We did not know last year that the state was going to make new metal, and where we had been mailing out renewal decals that cost 53 cents a piece, the license plate cost $4.50 a piece. So that required us to ask for, $50,000 more. Then I budgeted for $60,000 for next year. So we'll have 6 months of new metal from July to December. And then it will go back to being a decal next year in January. And as far as I know, there won't be any big, new metal, going out.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yes, Kathy, could you tell us on line 799, the other capital outlay, what that amounts for?
Yes,
Credit card readers.
right, it's the credit card readers. The ones that we have right now are very outdated, and they're attached to the monitors of each of the clerks. And we've had several occasions where, because our clerk is swiping the card, that evidently they can dispute that charge and say, well, I didn't swipe that. And so then we have to end up paying our provider for that money. And so these are a chip reader, and also it will where they can sign their name as well. And like on our documents where when you come in to apply for tag and registration, you'll have to sign a title application. And this, when they make their signature, it will print out on whatever it is that that transaction they're doing. So they won't have to sign various things other than just that one time. And also, the salesman had called today and said that we possibly might want to get maybe this was for 12 or 10. I was 12.
We budgeted for 12.
Right. He was saying we might want to go down to that were $475 as opposed to the $1,280, which would save us $1,610. So it'd be $13,800 rather than the $15,410.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. Story? Commissioner Williams?
Are you keeping the office open in Johnson City near Lifestyles?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. Did you? Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I think we're good for another 2 or 4 years on the lease.
All right. All right, seeing no further questions.
Just check, and I'll be asking this, you carry over any fund balance?
No.
They don't have a fund balance, but that's the office. Certain others do have a reserve account that, a small amount of money goes into every year.
But this office does not.
No, they do have a dedicated reserve for certificate of title, which is used for, computer supplies and whatnot. I want to say that balance is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $60,000.
60,000, and we keep about 60 in there. How do we fund that? How does that work?
Well, as several of the departments, and Brenda has some, and the sheriff has some, when certain fees are assessed statutorily, there may be and Kathy, you'd have to tell me what your certificate of title fee is. It's $1 or $2 that is collected, that goes in, that's for specific items that dollar amount came about for. And that goes into her reserve. Now, she can use that to fund different items within her budget, as do some of the other registered deeds, court clerks, sheriff's office. So it's not a fund balance, but it is a dedicated reserve.
So when that money's moved, what's the checks and balances?
You all have to make a budget amendment to use it. You have to move it out of your.
That's right.
Correct.
And it's also tracked, the balance that's in there, is it going up, down, or?
It gets adjusted at the end of the year.
Okay.
Money does not go in there on a recurring, the fees come into the county, and when we look at the revenue, you'll see certificate of title fees. Those things go in as revenue, but that reserve balance does not get adjusted till the year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else with a question? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Story, for all your hard work and coming to keep the minutes 2 nights in a row too. We appreciate that a lot. Our next speaker is Sarah Lawson, our clerk and master. Thank you for coming, Sarah.
Thank you all for doing this. I like this. It's nice to be able to talk about it.
Something new,
Yeah.
new and different.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have. I'm not asking for much more than last year. Just a couple of additional funds in our legal notices. Those things have kind of went up over the past year. So we're asking.
Page
Yeah.
26 for y'all that are looking.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, you go
I tried
ahead.
to get it, I couldn't find it, so. The page 26 is, your change report.
So we're asking for $2,000 there to cover those increased costs for publication, for service of process as part of the tax sale. We pay the constables and other individuals who serve papers for us for that tax sale. I'm asking for an additional $1,500 in maintenance agreements. That's just to cover additional costs for our court view document management system and our e-government delinquent tax system. Those go up a little each year, and we're getting really close and need to get that little bump there. I'm asking for an additional $400 in postal charges. Cost of stamps has went up, and we're mailing out more now than we have in the past. And $500 for tuition registration fees. I have 2 paralegals who will need to be recertified this year, so I'm asking for that additional funds to certify them. And a small amount of salary increase. So.
No personnel increase.
No personnel increases. I have an open position right now that I am actively interviewing for, but it was given to me last year in the budget. So I'm hoping to fill that soon.
Tell us just a little bit about your salary. You know, some departments will ask for a percent across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about your salary increase.
I did ask for a 3% raise across the board, and then there was a small merit raise increases that I had put in for some of my employees who are consistently on time and do what they are supposed to do and show up when they're supposed to regularly. I try to reward those people with an additional merit increase. And I think there's a couple of those that have, on the worksheet that I had penciled in, that got about 4%.
Is that what's reflected in the document we have tonight, the merit?
Yes, it is. We have 408,000. If you look there on the deputy line, is the extended payroll.
And that's 9 employees.
Yeah, I know. I
Or 8 employees.
The year-over-year change doesn't reflect 4%.
Well, and I think I had.
May not, it may be that you have, yeah.
No, I see what it is.
I think what it is there is that your budget, had you not done anything at the end of the year, you'd have some surplus in your salary.
Correct. And the person that I had an employee resign who was making about $36,000, and I think the new employee I had budgeted at $28,000.
Okay.
Right.
Your current base pay is about $387.
Right, because
On an annual basis.
So in essence, you're self-funding the pay increases.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
The budget is, you know, yeah, she would have surplus in her budget, I guess.
I would.
So
and
just to be real clear, as we go forward, it's always department. For those of you not on the budget committee, we have to make sure we're comparing apples to apples.
Mm-hmm.
But the 408 does include the 2% across the board and the merit raises.
It includes, is it 3%?
3% across the board cost. I considered that cost of living increase. And then a few that will get a little bit more if they're doing what they're supposed to do. Since October, I had a new position and I filled it, and then I had an employee that resigned, and I've had 2 rounds of interviews, and I haven't really found anybody that I think is worthy of the job, honestly. We've had,
Sarah, what is your starting pay?
that position would be $17.33 an hour.
Thank you.
Thank you for being diligent.
And that's the cap. I don't know that I would start that person out at that, but that's the maximum that I would pay a new person. And what
Right. I'd just like to know what starting pay is. And
right. Well,
gives me a
starting
better
$13.50 is where I would start them if they were brand new, fresh. They get $13.50, and that's what my new employee that I hired in October has started out at, and she's worked out really well.
All right.
Any other questions for me? All right. Good luck, y'all. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's good to see everybody.
All right, our second court clerk, Brenda Downs. Brenda, thank you for being here this evening.
Yeah, back up a couple of pages to 23. Let's see, bring the court budget. Immediately after that, the general session judges on 24. She also operates the drug court, which is at 25, and then budget other administration judges on page 28.
And Brian, the question you were asking earlier to Ms. Story, we have what's called a data clerk fee. And it collects $2 on certain fees that are paid, and the $2 goes into our data clerk fee. What we can use that on is basically common sense, anything data. We had to replace a total of 20-some computers so far, and we're already having to go around and replace 15 in the near future. I use that clerk data money to pay for it, so it's no new monies. So it basically just sits there until we're able to use it.
Yeah.
So,
Obviously, expenditure, it doesn't grow.
no. Mitch, I owe you an apology. I thought I sent you this that shows the increase and what it's for. Basically, guys, I only have 5 little increases. I asked for $2,000 more in overtime pay. During COVID, kind of just sat there dormant for a while, but now that we're back in operation, court goes past 5 o'clock quite a bit. So that's where the overtime goes. A lot of people don't like for it to be paid, but if they have more than 20 hours, I don't like it to be sitting there, so I do like to pay it. Anything we don't use just goes right back. I asked for a little bit additional money in travel. Conferences are back in session now. They're not online. It is beneficial if it's a conference I can bring somebody to, because when they do breakout sessions, one can go one way, one go another. Maintenance agreements, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I just came up with the number. I talked to a lot of people, 9.5% interest. I don't have all my maintenance contracts in for the next fiscal year. Mitch we've already discussed the copier contract, maintenance contract, lease contract will go down. Anything I don't use in this just goes right back to general fund. Registration fees for the judges. I have not really gotten an educational answer as to why, but it increased. So I'm just asking for $650 more. And evaluation and testing. I've never had this line item go over. I just sent a budget amendment request to Mitch about a week ago. I've never had this one go over. What it is, it's judges or whomever, DAs, attorneys will order mental evaluation testing on inmates. That hasn't been the problem. The problem has been the interpreters. You know, we can have 3 deaf defendants in 1 year, and this year we have had the same group of 4. They have been in civil court, sessions court, criminal court. And I even have to pay when they meet with their attorney if they're indigent. So that one kind of caught me by surprise. I thought the AOC would jump in there at some point and try to help us out. I've got a polite email back yesterday. Nope, it's on the county. Yes, sir.
Randy, just one question.
Yes,
I
sir.
know Social Security went down $48,000. It just seems a little unusual.
Let me look at that one, Commissioner.
Went from 90,000 to 41,450.
Yeah,
You know, this old guy's been on Social Security, that catches our attention.
yeah, no, we want to keep that up.
That's right.
I've got another spreadsheet, yeah, it looks like it ought to be, I mean, based on her, total employees, it ought to be closer to 84,000.
But if you just get us an
Yeah,
answer
that
tomorrow
might
night,
be, yeah, we may get,
yeah, that'd be
something
fine.
digit or something, Commissioner.
I did ask for across the board, 5% on each employee. The reason for that, you guys, and I think we've all talked about it, and Ms. Carter talked about it, first thing, you know, inflation's what, 8-point-some%? Gas, food. My husband and I, we go to the grocery store, and it's just the two of us. You have a new grandbaby, Jim. I don't know how people with 2 and 3 kids do it. I honest to goodness don't. You know, it's just my husband and I, and by the time we leave the grocery store, I'm one of 8. I don't know how in the world my parents would do it in this day and age, but anyway, so it is 5% across the board. Hope it goes through. The employees would greatly appreciate it.
How many work in your office?
There is a total of 30 full-time, 3 part-time, and then 5 night deputy clerks. Now, what Mitch was shortly saying, we have a recovery court grant. So Deborah France falls in under the circuit court umbrella, but she is not paid out of my budget or any county budget. It's simply a state grant.
And about what do those employees start out at, Brenda?
$12.81.
$12.81.
Yes, sir.
What is that, about
About $25,000 a year.
$25,000 a year?
You don't want to know. We're in the wrong business. No, mileage for one interpreter call, and Lieutenant Foster back there can smile because his officers sit right there in the courtrooms and watch him. They bill you for an hour regardless. If they're there an hour and 15 minutes, rolls to 2 hours. They bill you for mileage. If I cancel them the day before, they bill you $100 across the board. But usually one interpreter to come for hearing impaired could be anywhere from $154 to $200. So.
An hour?
Yes, sir. One bill.
What about languages, let's say like.
Now, foreign language, the AOC does pay for that. I've even went as far as having them from Nashville come, stay in a hotel, be here all day long. Administrative Office of the Courts, they pick up that one. So if I had to pick interpreter versus hearing impaired, I would much rather pay for hearing impaired. And it's their right. When I worked across the parking lot, could you imagine being deaf and being arrested? I mean, you want to talk about a fish out. You don't know what's going on. So, they're able to call. They're able to have a fair trial. So, I mean, I'm all for what it's being spent. I just never imagined that was going to be a line item I was going to be asking Mitch for money on.
You just had 20,000 for overtime? Did I understand that right? Or
No, I asked for $2,000 more.
$2,000?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm all about if they can get it done, get it done. And I'm all about paying them if I can pay them. I just don't like for it to just sit there. The good news is half of the employees, they use it. But a couple of them, they look at that as a little bit of spending money. No, we're not talking anything crazy. I think the most I've ever paid one clerk since I have been circuit court clerk has been 40 some hours. I mean, I'm not talking like hundreds of hours.
They're taking time off and other, they either get paid or they take.
Correct, it's their choice. Majority of them like the time off. The civil girls like the time off, the criminal and sessions.
That's something that always shocks me. We'll talk about inflation and things going up and people taking more time off instead of taking money.
And they're the girls that eat out. They're the girls that eat out every day instead of packing their lunch. It's interesting. You have your savers and your spenders.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right.
Good.
Brenda, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioners, I appreciate that very much.
Dana, our election administrator, is here with us tonight. She's got all kinds of stuff lined up, I bet, tonight, don't you, Dana?
You can tell I'm the newbie in the room. Hi, guys. I'm Dana Jones. Thank you for everything you all do to our counties. I tried hard to reach all of you before tonight to get my budget to you so that you can see it and you can see how we spend our money. So this is the first budget I've done for the county. I wasn't quite sure how to do it, so I just went to last year's budget, pulled receipts, and tried to do the best thing that I could to tell you exactly what I need to run my department. I didn't put any fluff in there, so hopefully I haven't missed anything. It will be my pleasure to answer any questions you have on it.
Looks like you've done a very good job, Dana.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I was impressed.
I know, Mr. Chairman, I think Dana's handed out her packet to most, if not all of you, but when she brought it to my office, I made it a point to tell her that if she ever wanted to stop working as the administrator of elections, put her to work at council budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she'd done a great job. I was very impressed.
Thank you. Yes. Did y'all find the page number 8?
8.
Okay.
What was it?
Page 8. Yes, in the election commission, as in some of our other groups, there is a maintenance of effort requirement. That requirement for the election commission is that the commission has to fund her at the same level they did with the same number of elections in the previous budget year. So next year, you're going to have 2 elections. So we would have, you're required to fund her at the budgeted funding level, last year, or whenever. I think last year we had two elections. Right?
Yes, sir. It was this year.
Well, if it's increased, it does, the next time around, the next time you have 2 elections, you'll have that same minimum number on any maintenance of effort. Once you put it there, and that's not just for the election commission, it's for the schools, it's for the library, to some extent to the sheriff, although it's a different calculation. So just keep that in mind as we're looking at these numbers. Okay. Anything else?
That's all right. I didn't know that, so.
Any questions for Ms. Jones? Dana, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
You've done a great
very
job,
much.
and we appreciate you being here. Right, our next speaker is Mr. Rusty Sales. And I think he went outside for a moment. He thought you was gonna be longer, Dana, is what it was. Well.
What page is this on?
What page is EMA on, Mitch?
Who are we going, EMA?
EMA?
It's gonna be, the sheriff, 50, let's see, give me a second, y'all. 54, well, the count number is 54. Page 40. Department 5414.
Good evening, Commission.
Good evening, Rusty.
One thing I do need to share with y'all on his budget, when we were talking about the assessment, the reappraisal. For dollars that we spend out of his budget in EMA, okay, we have an agreement. One, we get a grant that helps pay for some of those administrative costs. $68,000.
It's about 62.5, a little over 62.5.
62.5 that helps pay for that administrative cost. We take his total spend during the year, subtract the 62, and then we split that with the city of Johnson City. So Commissioner Huffine, going back to your, questions a minute ago, if his dollar spend goes up, if his spend goes up $1,
It's 50 cents.
50 cents.
So he, just ground here, he's up 36.9, cut it.
Yes, yes.
And actually on that 36.9, I guess you're speaking to the increase overall. We administer a Homeland Security grant. We're getting another Homeland Security grant that will be coming in for cybersecurity. Those grants are roughly about $147,000. And we're under the assumption that the cybersecurity grant that comes in will be about the same. We've never taken an administrative fee. There's a maintenance and administrative fee that we can take from the federal government on that. So the administrative fee would roughly be $7,000. It's 5% of that grant that we can apply to. What the increase is basically I'm going to hire a full-time employee admin person. Right now it's just myself and my operations officer in our office. And with the addition of another grant coming, that's going to be a lot more time administrative wise that will be applied to that. So if we are awarded the other grant, which they haven't done the funding, notice of funding opportunity yet, we're expecting that to come out in about the next month or so. Washington County my office will be administering that grant as well. So we have the potential of getting about $14,000 that we can add to that increase in budget based on that 5% taken off of both of those grants for administrative fees. So basically the cost to the Washington County would be around $11,800 after it's split with the city.
What would you be doing for cybersecurity?
We actually don't know yet. This is something that's came down through the Department of Homeland Security. It's brand new. They just told us about it this year. It's along the same lines as the Homeland Security grant that we get now for fighting terrorism. It's going to be a district grant, which means the upper 8 counties in Northeast Tennessee. We're not sure how they're going to spend it yet. And the reason for that is the Homeland Security grant is split up per district. So each district in the state gets a certain amount of money every year towards this Homeland Security. Well, with us being $147,000, we don't know. It's not a whole lot you can buy on cybersecurity for $147,000 for 8 counties. So we don't know if they're going to use it and purchase it from a state level, or if they're going to try to administer it down to us. It's still all brand new. So I wish I could answer the question, but I can't.
And that's why I struggle with some of these grants. Okay, so you get a grant, and you're like, well, we get a $100,000 grant, we put somebody in a job that costs us $30,000, so we're $70,000. Good. Well, but if you spend that $100,000 on something new, then that head count, that money doesn't cover that head count. That's just a true increase to the county by head count.
Right.
So the grants that you're writing, they're not funding anything that you're doing now, taking cost out of your budget. It's just increasing your budget.
We're not actually writing the grants. We're not hiring a grant writer. We administer the grant, which means we do the purchasing. We keep up all paperwork. We go through the audits and all that. So historically too, if I'm not speaking out of turn, we had a full-time admin up until 2017, and the admin that we had left. This is when we were still on the city side. We hadn't switched over to the county at that point. The city didn't let us hire the admin back, and obviously kept that portion of our budget in the general fund. When COVID hit, I was allowed to hire a part-time person. So a part-time person doing this kind of work at $12 an hour, it's kind of hard to keep. So that's why the administrative side of this it's a lot. It's a lot of paperwork. I mean, for myself as the director, I do the grant, and I've been doing it since Ness hired me. But that's one of the things I want to push off to this person so I can do more developing and moving us forward with emergency management and looking for more grants that will actually benefit the county on hazard mitigation side and things like that.
Rusty, just make sure.
Just for clarity on that, these grants, they're really kind of peculiar, but they come every year. We're still spending off the 2019 grant, so it gets spent late. But they can specifically allow for any personnel. It is procurement for fire protection, police protection, some of it split. These grants, like most grants that we see, have an administration component of it. 5% can be used for administration. What Rusty, I think, is talking about is he's borne all of the work himself and let all of the money go to purchasing of equipment. But it's for 8 counties. And in some recent discussions, from my perspective, we're servicing 7 other counties with a lot of effort that, is performing. So, from my perspective, just, I'd rather have them spend time, I think we'd rather have them spend time, focusing on our EMA operations, stuff like that, and use what's allowed in those grants to help pay for somebody just to do the paperwork and stuff. But I don't think that is an okay. Maybe it makes it worse.
But maybe
it's only good for 1 year, right?
Yeah, but
no, we have one grant that we have, the 62.5 is an Empg grant. That's an annual grant. That's something that the federal government gives us as operating costs. The Homeland Security grants are 3-year grants. For example, I'm currently spending 2019 and it closes April 30th of this year. And then I'll start on the 2020 grant, and it'll close April of next year. So it's a 3-year recurring grant, is how that works. And we're under the impression that the other one will work the same way. It'll be a 3-year grant.
Commissioner Carriger?
One of Rusty's comments got my brain thinking, and this is for Mayor and Mitch. Who do we have that monitors our computer systems for hacking?
BCTI.
Okay. Bailey?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, do they do for agencies?
Well, he's part,
So they monitor for everybody that is in the county system, computer system?
yeah, except for the sheriff uses, a company called Bird Consult.
Okay.
There's some overlap there between BCTI and Bird.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wheeler?
I see you've got the raise in for the director and the part-time, or not part-time, I'm sorry, other salaries and wages. Does that include a raise for the other employee?
Yes. My current operations
Yes.
person, yes.
And what percentage was that?
3.
3, okay.
Rusty?
Sir?
I know you hired a part-time person,
We did.
and this person would be a full-time person, right?
Yes, sir.
But the part-time person didn't stay in the budget, right? It just combined into one position as one full-time person?
Correct. Yes. So I had roughly 16.5, I think is what I had budgeted for the other part-time person, and that's gonna roll into
It's
the
just gonna
full-time
roll
salary.
into
Yes,
one
sir.
full-time
Yes, sir.
person. So, okay. Y'all need somebody full-time. I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
there's a lot of, you have a lean, mean operation, and I see it all the time, and I guess I'm fortunate to do that. And I commend you on the job you do, and
Thank you.
and all that you've done for us through COVID, and y'all do a great job.
Appreciate that, sir.
Anything else for Rusty? Rusty, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming.
Sir.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Director Hodgin is here with us tonight. I don't see Director Wheeler here.
Director Hodgins here with us from the Health Department. You'll be on a roll here this week, Director Hodgins. You'll be here this week, next week.
Yes, sir.
We may even schedule a meeting the next week.
Y'all move forward about 3 or 4 pages, it's page 46, where the health department starts. You'll see there's 2 components. One is the locally funded portion of the health department, which starts on page 46. At the bottom of 46 is where it gives what was called the DGA grant, which is money which is funds that flows from the state to fund a big portion of the health department operation. And we don't have that, the reason I'm pointing that out, I think I made a big deal. We don't have that final grant number yet, so those numbers will change, but it's 100% funded grant, so net, if the expenditure numbers go up, the revenue numbers go up, so that's 0 to the bottom line. Okay, Chris. Sorry.
No, this is all new to me. I mean, this is the first time I've done this. The last time we did this last year, I was fresh in the seat and I was hip deep in COVID vaccine and leaned heavily on my regional office to get me through this process and on with getting back to putting COVID vaccine out there. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Director Hodgins on his budget? I know he's a lean, mean operation up there.
Just curious about the communications increase.
It's a net reduction in that. We missed BCTI in our last year's budget. So that was a significant amount of money that we ended up picking up elsewhere in this year's budget, but I put that back in for next year. But it's a net decrease when we switched our carriers over.
All right, Director Hodgins, we appreciate you coming and thank you so much.
Sir, appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Wheely's here with us as well. Dan, if you want to come on up, Lori, and we'll talk about EMS. And I guess you'll be our last slide of the night.
Thank you, sir.
You go ahead, Dan. I'll put this one in our record in a minute.
Thank you all for letting us come tonight. Dan Wheely, I'm the director for Washington County MES. This is Miss Lori Kemp. She's our comptroller. She's supposed to keep me in line so I don't say anything inaccurate. So this year, in our budget, obviously we're expecting increases in fuel and supplies and insurance and everything else that everybody else is expecting, which in our budget we've budgeted to cover those expenses with increase in revenue based on call volume and some additional funding we've received through reimbursements. But we are asking for an increase in revenue or in funding this year from the county and the city. As you all know, we get part of our funding from the city and the county. We're asking for a pay adjustment for our staff. If you look on page 2 of the handout, comparing our paramedics and EMTs to other public safety entities, Sheriff's Department, Jonesboro Fire Department, Johnson City Fire Department, we're about 25% under where we should be on paying our staff. We've gotten here over the years by trying to be competitive with other EMS agencies in the region. At the same time, other public safety entities have increased their wages and their rates. We're struggling with staffing, much like many others. You have people leaving EMS all the time to go to other jobs, to go to Eastman, go to call centers, go to just getting out of the EMS field altogether. So it's very hard to recruit and retain quality staff. So we're not going to get to a 25% increase overnight, and we didn't get here overnight, so we're not expecting to get out of that overnight. But we do have a plan over the next 4 or 5 years to try to do pay rate increases each year to get us where we need to be. With that, we still have to give our cost of living adjustments and our merit raises, so we don't just replace a wage adjustment, a cost of living adjustment with a wage adjustment. So we are asking for $256,500 in additional funding next year. That is to cover the $2,000 wage adjustment for all staff and our 3% COLA raise. We are budgeting to cover our 3% merit raise. We're budgeting to cover our COLA raise, increases in fuel, increases in medical expenses, a 14% increase in health insurance. All of those increases are in the budget for next year. We're asking Johnson City to match that. That 256 request is going to Johnson City as well. Happy to answer any specific questions.
And on an hourly basis, what are we increasing our starting per hour?
It's hard to say because we have 4 different hourly rates. So we have 10s, 12s, and 24-hour shifts, and so it will change their hourly rate different for each one. So it's really hard to.
Okay.
It's about a 4% increase for each.
And how many vacancies do you currently have?
Today we have 8. We've been running with 6 to 8 for almost a year. It seems like when we hire and get down to 5 or 6, 1 or 2 leave.
What's your total head count?
118 full-time staff.
Dan, is it true that there's more licenses being retired than there is actually being EMS people completing school?
It is in Tennessee. So National Association of EMS came in and did a study a couple of years, and they did a presentation to the state EMS board and said that Tennessee was in dire straits because we were retiring more licenses every year than we were issuing. They're just not getting people interested in the field. We're doing things to try to recruit and get interest into this field. We do a EMT class at Davy Crockett High School, so when those seniors graduate, they can test for their EMT license right out of high school. We have about 6 or 8 each year graduate from that. Last year we graduated 6, and we weren't able to hire any of them because they all went on to nursing school or to the fire department. So, pay is not everything, but pay is something. It is a big issue. People can, on the hour, people can go to McDonald's and Hobby Lobby and places like that, start making more on the hour than we start people out at. And they have to be licensed. They have to be at least an EMT basic. And for us, they can only be an EMT basic for a little while, and then they have to go on to school to get their advanced EMT or paramedic.
How tough is it? I thought about it going to the fire department. How tough is it for you to compete with the fire department on time?
It is right now. We start an EMT basic out, which has to have a semester of school and be licensed. We start an EMT basic out at $28,314. Johnson City Fire starts a fire recruit out at $31,000, and they train them. They start them out with 0 training, and then they provide them 6 months of training. So that's what we're trying to get so at least we can compete with the fire departments and the sheriff's department and police departments and things. Realistically, we compete with nursing at a certain level. Our paramedics go to school for 5 semesters. Graduate, they don't have an associate's degree. They just have a certificate as a paramedic, but it takes them 5 semesters to do that. So 2.5 years of schooling And we start them out at almost $20,000 less than the associate degree in RN can make. So it's, it's a different job, and we're not saying that paramedics should make what RNs make, but we have to get a little more competitive than we are.
So on the public side, we split with the city evenly, and then the balance of rural revenue comes from state services.
Yes. So we bill for services, bill insurance for services. We generate about 75% of our total budget is through patient revenues. And then the rest of it is through appropriations from the city and the county and town of Jonesboro.
Then just a question or two. I mean, it looks like the bulk of your expense increases, as you discussed on the payroll, right, just trying to raise those pay, so payroll benefits, but 20,000 on utilities, just percentage wise, that's a lot. What's going on there?
Well, the current budget is what this is based off of, looking at last year. It was underestimated there, so we kind of have to catch up.
So it was just poor budgeting or
Poor forecasting.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, we're under, or we're over budget in that line item now for this current year, so we're
just trying to get it to cover actual expenses.
We haven't added any new locations since last year. We do have a dispatch center now that operates 24 hours a day, so we'll have a little more utilities associated with that.
And if I remember right, we write off over $1 million in bad debts a year.
We do.
Yes, sir.
So that's a real drag on the service.
So we pursue collections, but at some point we write that off, and we write off a lot of bad debt through contractual adjustments that are, with the government, they pay what they pay. And
You talking about the VA?
well,
No, just forget it. Forget it.
Just call up WWK and send me that.
yeah.
So we're all over.
Yes, sir.
Is there an age or educational level before they can enter one of these trainings?
To be an EMT, they have to be a high school graduate. To currently in the state, to drive an ambulance, even as an EMT, you have to have 3 years of unrestricted driver's license. So they can operate in the back, but they can't drive the vehicle until they're 19 right now. And there's legislation in the state this year to try to reduce that to 18. But right now, they pretty much have to be 19 before we can hire them.
My understanding is sometimes, you just don't have the troops to stand down.
I mean, that's true. There's days that call volume exceeds resources. I think in the last 12 years that I've been, we've called for mutual aid twice. We have a convalescent division that will stop transports on that side to move those units over, and not to say that sometimes services aren't delayed because we just run out of trucks, but you also can't staff for the once or twice every 10 years that you have that school bus wreck, and you can't budget for that and staff for that either.
Surrounding counties help.
They do, yes, and we have very good relationships with surrounding counties, and if we do, you'll remember the school bus wreck about 10 years ago. Greene County came and helped us, Sullivan County came and helped us, so we do have a mutual aid request for other counties.
What a great job EMS does, Dan, and we appreciate the service you all do for our community. We sure
We
do.
appreciate that. We've got a great staff that works very hard and provides excellent care for our community, and we appreciate all the support that the commission gives us as well.
Thanks for the good job.
Thanks,
You're doing good things.
Thank you. Rod, if there's no more questions, we'll, thank you very much, Dan, and we'll let you go. All right, that'll conclude our budget hearings this evening. unless there's any old business that we would like to discuss.
Mayor, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know if you had a chance to think about these appropriations. Is there anyone on this list that you'd like to see present tomorrow night in addition to the schedule?
Mr. Mayor, I only had one question, and it was about the soil conservation thing. I don't know that we need a presentation, but I noticed the request this year was 0, or have we just not heard from them yet?
Oh, on the 18,000?
Yes.
Good.
We haven't.
Well, but, and the mayor and I haven't talked about this yet, so it all still is sort of fluid. When you look at the soil conservation budget, and going back to the discussion of grants earlier, 2 or 3 years ago, they started funding a position with a grant, the National Soil Conservation Resource Association. That grant going away, and they're bringing this they want to bring on this person in a full-time capacity. We appropriated the 18,000 last year because that's what they'd asked for the year before. Until we get some further clarification from the soil conservation folks on what they need that 18 for, since we're now funding, I think, 3 positions over there, or 3.5, then that's why I left it out of this.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious.
Any direction from any of the people you heard today that you didn't communicate with them directly as to staffing of, budget, anything that caught your attention that needs to be individually addressed? Coach, me. Okay. The volunteer fire departments on this sheet have asked for $200,000 each. That's not unusual. We've seen that for multiple years in the past. Last year, we funded them with a slight increase from, I think, 130 to 132.
That's right.
So as it stands now, their request is $200,000. So, if we were in a smaller budget committee, we probably wouldn't be in line to receive that. Do y'all have any feel for that? Would you like to hear from Charlie as to why they, or where they are in the request? I'll just say this, I've seen this request probably for 7 or 8 years. So, I would say that they don't expect to receive it. And of course, I think in aggregate, that's about $400 or $500. No, sorry, it's a couple $100,000. Not that we don't value them, but it's, that is a huge increase.
Mayor, with the risk for next year's economy, we just gotta be, I think, very frugal with taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
Really do.
I agree, and so, at some point, whether it's the budget committee, or it's the full commission or whatever, needs to wrestle around with what we're gonna contribute to the volunteer fire department.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, if I may, to that end, your opinion or direction, is it better for us to ground them full commission, or is it better to ground them in the budget?
Well,
and when I say grounding, I'm realistic too.
That's a good comment, because this is different. I mean, in past years, 5 people have heard what you just heard tonight. We make the put it together, sort through it, and change it until the very end, and then present it to the full commission as a recommendation. So the exercise of this year is for your input to be on the front end with regard to these departments that you heard, and office holders, as well as appropriations or any other expense item. Because as Commissioner Pierger said several times this evening, the number is bigger as it's on paper today. Our taxpayers are having to pay higher costs for everything, just like the county is. So, you know, at the end of the day, this group needs to come together and decide how to balance that. And so, you know, this is an opportunity to get it on the front end. I mean, rather than wrestling around with it 2 days before we got to have it complete.
Maybe one thing I think we ought to add to a couple of things really, but first is during this budget process, we're going to get a report back from CTAS evaluating 2 options to potentially provide some personnel support for fire. So we may want to hear that before we decide anything final on any of this, because that could greatly impact it. If we were moving forward with that, we certainly wouldn't probably be able to consider a lot of this. Second thing I wanted to say is also these volunteer fire departments really do work on these budgets, and they can support. They usually, we haven't seen it at public safety yet this year, but usually we see a packet from them with their, you know, they show us what they're raising money wise. They give us their full disclosure. So, and then how they built the budget that they're asking for. They have asked for the same, yes, general increase for several years in a row, many years in a row, which they've not gotten. But a couple of things to keep in mind when we're talking about volunteer fire departments are that they have for a decade or more struggled with, it's harder to get volunteers. The way we live today, you know, people don't volunteer to come sit at the volunteer fire department on the weekend anymore. People don't work right in the community where they can, you know, drop what they're doing on the farm and go fight the fire. So they're struggling with volunteers. They are also struggling with fundraising. So where they're not raising as much money anymore with the same, even if they use the same fundraiser. So we do need to keep that in mind. I want to be fair to them and point that out. But at the same time, we do have another, a pretty big report coming probably sometime in April that we may want to consider too.
Commissioner Wheeler, is the ARPA committee considering doing anything or fire protection just from that different source?
We have one of the things, the blocks that you all have talked about before, and the ARPA committee's continuing to look at this money being sort of set aside is a pretty significant amount, but it wouldn't cover anything that would be in these budgets. Because this would be things like turnout gear, hoses, that type thing. The ARPA money, in keeping with the idea that we want to do big one-time projects, what we're looking at is and CTAS has actually kind of weighed in on this a little bit too, so far in just private meetings, but they'll weigh in. If they don't weigh in their report, they will be willing to step up and weigh in a little bit if we ask them to. But is to come up with a project or maybe a couple projects that would be aimed toward lowering the ISO ratings for as many folks as we can in the county. It obviously, whatever we do will also help the volunteer fire departments, but the real aim is to find something that's going to lower the ISO rating for as many people as we can.
Which goes to Commissioner Carrier's point of helping our taxpayers have lower insurance costs.
Yeah.
So just before we leave, I'm going to advocate just a second for our volunteer fire departments because as Commissioner Wheeler mentioned, the fundraising over the last 2 years for them has been close to zero because the bean dinners and the barbecues and the other stuff that they've done, you know, where social gatherings really weren't kept. You know, has been close to zero. Also, several years ago, the state fire marshal came down with a ruling that, I mean, it was almost directed at volunteer fire departments with respect to selling fireworks. So the number of our volunteer fire departments that sold fireworks, they came down with this ruling where essentially you had to have a sprinkler building in order to do it. I mean, it was ridiculous, absolutely absurd. But, you know, the groups over time have figured out a little bit of a workaround, and so they're doing some of that. But that was a huge deal for them. So, to Commissioner Wheeler's point, they have really been restricted in fundraising. So, if you think about it, these volunteers, fire departments, serve to protect our community. at a much lower rate if we had to have a fire protection service for the county. That would be multiple millions of dollars. And Commissioner Garrett probably knows what Johnson City spends for their system.
It's expensive, but, I'd kind of like to wait to see what CTAS has to say, because in my mind, I'm wondering if the business model for volunteer fire departments needs to be changed.
CTAS is looking at two things. First, what the cost would be in the slash benefit of having 2 paid firefighters in each station. So the cost is well over $5 million that the county would have. And they were looking at other things around that, whether or not it would also create the need for a county fire chief and other things that would additionally raise that cost. Secondly, they were looking at the program that the county's initiated on its own, and that is combining EMS, and then has been very cooperative with volunteer fire departments to put a couple of EMS folks into the fire hall, either 24/7, answer the phones, and begin to move a fire protection vehicle to the scene, so that volunteers don't have to come to the station, sometimes passing the fire on their way just to go back. So where it's been implemented, that's worked great. It hasn't worked great in every station for various reasons. So, but CTAS was also looking at what that model might do to help us to reduce response times to the fire, changing the ISO, help us in. So that's what you'll expect to see in that report. Not a lot of detail as to how the individual fire departments operate with respect to purchasing turnout gear and replenishing stuff. Turnout gear has a life. That's the suits, the air packs, and all that stuff that it has a finite life. After a certain amount of time, it has to be replaced back to code. So they're continually doing this stuff, and the money that the county provides them helps support what they do. There are other subsidy comes from these benefits and stuff that they put on and try to raise money for fundraising. So they are, as a group, very independent organizations. If you've ever been around the fire halls, they each have a very unique character. And the chief is, he is the chief in this. And you can't just say, hey, all you volunteer fire departments, here's how we're going to do it. That would not be a good meeting, would it?
No, sir.
Yeah, that would be a good meeting. So they all have their own way of doing things, and they're all very effective at what they do. But one of the things that I haven't seen any of this yet is we're going to need to replace radios for those things. We replaced radios in the police departments and others in the past. That's coming. We're going to be able to eke out another year or two, Alan tells me, but that's coming as an expense. So, okay, nobody wants to see anybody wrong. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we're going to talk a lot about expenses tonight and tomorrow night, but definitely will come a time we'll need to talk about revenue. I guess there's where the rubber meets the road sometimes. So definitely we need to make a night to put revenue on our list and have some revenue recommendations and get some things solved. All right. Anything else? Is there anything we want to add to our agenda for tomorrow night? We can do that. All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Commissioner Davenport to adjourn, second by Commissioner Carragher. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. We're adjourned.
Jack. I understand.